Good morning. I am Ed. I didn't get much sleep, so thanks for coming. And by the way, I'm really late. I don't know if that's my fault. I must have been complacent about my speech on complacency. So, kind of fitting. As most of you know that know me, I talk a lot, and most of it doesn't make any sense, so just bear with me. But I've been chosen to make the first presentation here today, and usually, those of you who know me, I speak every year, and it's always on side note. This year, thanks a lot, Chris, he said it's going to be on complacency. So I had to look up how to spell that. But my computer has, once I learned how to turn that on, has spell check, so I was in good shape there. But, you know, it's a kind of an overused, but not very well understood term, because everybody else is complacent, but you or me, or it's always the other guy. So, first thing I wanted to do was, I kind of knew what it meant to me, but I wanted to Google it, like we do everything else, and see what they said that it meant. And there was lots of definitions, but one of them was a feeling of security, often while unaware or unconcerned with the unpleasant realities or harmful possibilities. And that pretty much talks about every body recovery I've ever done, all the rescues that I've been a part of this last year, which was a really busy year. I had fathers thanking me for bringing their sons' bodies out so that they could put them in the ground and have closure. I had fathers thanking me for bringing their daughters home to them. And all of these incidences were because of complacency. And so I didn't mind talking about it. You know, it starts out with something so simple as not running a primary reel. How many times have you heard, well, I know this cave? And then maybe a visual jump, well, I know this cave. And, or the other thing that you hear a lot is, well, I've done this 100 times. And then maybe not marking T's. Well, I know this cave. I hear that, and I hear that, and I hear that. And then I get to go pull the bodies out. And every time I hear something like, I don't need to run a line in here because I've done it so much, and I know this cave and all that, it brings me back to, I'm going to repeat it again, a feeling of security, often while unaware or unconcerned with unpleasant realities or harmful possibilities. And that's the thing. It's always going to happen to the other guy, not to me, because I do this all the time. I've done this 100 times. I know this cave. Same thing with gas management. As instructors, we teach gas management. We do dissimilar tank theory. Most students, when you first tell them we're going to do dissimilar tank theory, they have the look. But it's really basic, simple math. It's not that difficult. And it's there for a reason. But what do I hear all the time? Well, Bill's coming with us today, and he doesn't have a very good sack rate, so let's give him the 108s, which is exactly the opposite of what they were taught. But it gives us a feeling of security, often while unaware or unconcerned with the unpleasant realities or harmful possibilities. So it just keeps coming back to that same thing, complacency. And same thing goes with scooters. I see people all the time. They go out and buy a scooter. or I hear just got a good deal on this on eBay, and off we go. Because, I mean, what could go wrong? Emergency procedures, I do this all the time. I go in, I go out, what could go wrong? And training, it's a scooter. I mean, geez, I'm great. I'll just jump on it and go. What could go wrong? And we're back to a feeling of security, often while unaware or unconcerned with unpleasant realities or harmful possibilities, because it's not going to happen to me. I was one of the original founding members of the IUCRR, and I'm sure you all know what that is, the International Underwater Cave Rescue and Recovery Team. When Henry Nicholson started teaching or training us, the first thing he said was, it's called the International Underwater Cave Rescue and Recovery Team, but there are no cave rescues in cave diving. By the time we get called, it's always a fatality. And really, if you look at it, I mean, how many of you that cave dive tell someone exactly when you're coming out? I don't know anybody, I don't. I used to get in trouble all the time when I'd go on the road and you were gonna call me when you got out. I was worried. Well, by the time somebody gets worried, and then somebody calls somebody else and says, I'm worried, and then they call the sheriff's department or the local authorities, and then we're called. Well, then we have to gear up, and then we have to get to a site, and then we have to get geared up there and in the water, and then there's usually either nobody there, they're all inside that are in that group, or a person in that group, or one came out and they looked as long as they could possibly look. And then they didn't have enough gas to keep looking and still make it out alive. And they say, I looked everywhere, Ed, go get them. Well, geez, most of those caves are pretty big. And it's pretty zero visibility. So it's kind of a tough job. But in the history, there's only been a few cave rescues. And last year was a busy year for me. I did 3 body recoveries and 3 separate rescue attempts involving 4 bodies that I brought back alive for a change. So that was nice. But it just kept ringing clear that these didn't need to happen. What caused them to happen? Just like when we teach classes and we have to go over the incident reports and accident analysis. What caused this? Almost never has there been a fatality because one thing went wrong. One thing led to another, led to another, led to another. And almost all the time, it was from some form of, well, all the time, complacency. And that's kind of what happened with, I was kind of asked to do complacency just because of the rescues and recoveries that I've done, especially recently. So with the story of the first one, a couple of students, and they're in a class, they're with their instructor, and you get a false sense of security that nothing could go wrong because I'm with him. He's going to take care of me. Well, that kind of sounds like a feeling of security. I'm not going to read it to you again. You got the idea. But, and that's the thing. That's what it's always, almost always about, is they're unaware of those unpleasant realities or harmful possibilities. They were with their instructor. They were told to go down this tunnel. They assumed everything was part of class. What could go wrong? We're in a class. Cave diving is not that difficult. Everybody tells me it's easy, it's fun. Well, it is easy, it is fun, with good training and lots of practice. But you still have to show the cave the respect that it deserves and you have to not be complacent. So when I went in looking for these guys, they'd been in there a while. The instructor had no idea where they were at. And it was zero visibility everywhere. So I just searched and searched and searched. And after you search for a long time, it kind of gets to you like, I really need to find these people. And you stop and you listen and you hope you hear some bubbles or tapping or something, anything. And the cave is very quiet. And you just keep searching, you just keep searching. Well, finally, one of them started to panic, which, as we all know, stress, if not managed, builds and builds to the point where we go over the edge and we panic. Well, I heard a noise, and as we also know from everybody here has been in the water, sound is omnidirectional in the water. So you can't close your eyes and go, oh, well, he's over there. You just go till it gets louder or you get quieter. If you're in zero visibility and you start to see a little bit, guess what? You're probably going the wrong way. And I did find him, one of them. And he was panicked. I got him back to the goal line, and now I'm trying to think, what am I gonna do? I can't lose him again. And so I do the best I can to get him calmed down, and we're 50, 60 feet away from where he was, and there's a little bit of visibility. So I get him calmed down, and I tell him that I'm gonna go get his buddy, and I start the search all over again. And the other one was relatively calm, and for the dire situation that they were in. Anyway, after I got him out, decompressed them, and they were given their incident reports. The one told the officer that he knew he was going to die. He just wanted to write his wife a note telling her he loved her. But he couldn't find his wet notes, and he couldn't see to write. When the officer was interviewing the other one, one of the people that were there said, "You're awfully calm." And he said, "I thought it was part of the class." So you got one guy, panic, knows he's gonna die. And you got one guy, he's just gonna hang out because he thought, well, then he's just gonna grab me and I'll get yelled at later and I'll learn how to do it differently tomorrow. But he didn't even realize, or as this says, unaware of the unpleasant realities or harmful possibilities. So all of these things, just that one sentence is in just about everything. Just about everything that goes wrong in a cave, that is part of it. So it turned out well for them. Then there was the girl that I got out of Twin Cave. I was at another site. My tanks were already in the water. I had to get all my stuff loaded back up. I had to get all the way back to my shop. We had to get all my gear down to the boat. We had to get the boat out to the site. And all this time, she's already been gone for quite a while, and she's only got an aluminum 80. So the whole way out on the boat, I just kept thinking, oh God, I hope she's still alive. And I got in the water, and it was horrible visibility. There was a 90-foot circle of mud out in the lake, so I couldn't even find the entrance to the cave, let alone, I had to search just for the cave before I could start to search for her. And there again, what went wrong here? She was not only with her instructor that had taught her 11 years ago, but he was also her father. What could possibly go wrong when I'm with Dad? I mean, what could possibly go wrong? I'm with my instructor and I'm with my dad. They're the same guy, are my hero. That's as complacent as you're possibly going to get because you're very unaware of the unpleasant realities or harmful possibilities when you're with Dad. There are no harmful possibilities. Nothing, Dad's not gonna let anything happen to me. She was also with her brother. Nice little family outing. Plus, what could go wrong? I'm with Dad. We're just gonna go in a little ways, and then we're gonna come back. There again, a feeling of security. Often while unaware. I mean, I could just keep reading it to you. But I think you got the point. And that's the thing, is it was just complacency. What could go wrong when I'm with Dad? Now, luckily for me, she found an air pocket. And people say, oh, well, geez, she was okay, she found an air pocket. Well, did she have her oxygen analyzer with her? What's in that air pocket? If you pop your head up into an air pocket, are you now safe? I saw a video many years ago. A guy was filming himself going into he was ready to go into a flooded mine. And he said, I think I found a new tunnel. Today we're gonna, I don't remember, it was like 20 years ago, 15 years ago. He starts going in, and it's a good video, it's a cool looking mine. And he gets to a certain point, he makes a turn, and he pops up and you see the lens come, you know how that half water, half air. And he pops up and then he starts to talk. Oh, look at, and then the camera goes down. He didn't even get an entire word out. So, you know, what's in that? What's in that air? Is it air? H2S, that's commonly up in there, but there's a lot of things. Carbon dioxide, what's in there? Who knows? Unless you test it, you don't know. How long does that air last? If you got an air pocket, you're good for what? Forever? It's, you know, there's confined spaces classes where they teach you how to monitor confined spaces, because that air doesn't last forever. It doesn't last very long at all. So there was complacency on top of complacency on top of complacency. Luckily for me, she was really able to, I mean, she was pretty rattled. She was in a bad way, but she was able to stay calm while I got her out. So, you know, that worked out well for her. Had she not stayed calm, it wouldn't have turned out that well. In 2006, I got called to do a rescue at Jackson Blue. And the call came in that 800 or so feet back, we got a diver that's stuck, but he has gas. Well, there again, my shop personnel got me loaded up and on my way relatively quickly. The Sheriff's Department had the gate open, so I was able to just drive right up to the water. Got my gear in the water really quickly, a lot of good help. And I had a scooter, and I hit the trigger in very limited visibility. I could barely see past the end of the scooter. I scootered and scootered and scootered until I ran into clear water, and I figured I missed it. Now, before I finish this story, I'm gonna start with, you know, kind of like in TV when it says, 8 weeks ago. I don't know how many weeks ago it was. This guy and his wife started coming to the shop and renting a boat to take their kids out in the mill pond, and they were all open water divers. And they just enjoyed going diving around the cave entrance at Shangri-La and Jackson Blue and Twin Cave and Hole in the Wall, Gator Hole, and having a picnic on the boat, just enjoying life. Then, once they dived for a little while, they'd put the two daughters on the boat, and they'd say, Mom and I are gonna go take a peek around the spring real quick, we'll be back. And they really enjoyed it. They started going further and further into the cave. Pretty soon, people started coming in to get their tanks filled and saying, dude, you need to do something about these guys. There's open water divers 500-600 feet back. Hole in the wall was completely blown out. And as we're going through the zero visibility, we see two guys on single tanks pulling their way out on the gold line. So I did. I said, Harry, if you keep doing this, you're gonna die. And he looked at me and he said, I've been a dive master for 20 years. Oh, my bad. What was I thinking? Well, he kept doing it, and kept doing it, and kept doing it. And so finally, he called up one day and he said, hey, have you got a boat for Thursday? And I said, no, they're all booked. He said, how about Friday? Nope, that's not good either. Saturday? No, the weekend's all booked up. How about Monday? No, that's not looking good either. He goes, come on, you got 3 boats, I know it's not that busy. And I said, no, they're all booked. And at that time, you had to check in to the park, Jackson Blue, at the sheriff's department still, and it was full cave only. And he said, Ed, what's up? And I said, Harry, I told you and told you and told you, you keep doing this and you're gonna die. Well, I've made a decision, you're not gonna die on my boat. And I said, I don't want to have to go out there when your daughters are sitting on my boat and tell them my mom and dad are coming home tonight. I said, so you're all done. I said, get training or buy your own boat. Well, he wasn't very happy with that, but he thought about it and thought about it, and then he tried to get a boat from me a few days later, and I said, Harry, I'm done talking to you. I said, you see this cave as beautiful and inviting and crystal clear, just like all of us do. I said, but you don't have the training for when things go wrong. Sorry, I almost was me for a second. And we're gonna keep this PG. But anyway, I said, when it turns to zero visibility, you're gonna swear that somebody shut all the doors at the same time, and everywhere you feel, it's gonna be rock. Everywhere you look, it's gonna be zero visibility, and all you're gonna feel is a wall of rock. And he looked at me, and I'll never forget this. He said, Ed, I've been in visibility so bad it makes you cry. I said, wow, that might be worth a good cry. I'd like to see it. But I didn't. I just told him, I said, I'm not gonna tell you again. Well, Harry was the one I was going in looking for. Now, obviously, he's been in visibility so bad, I was gonna cry. So I was prepared for a good cry. Luckily, he's a macho man, and I figured in zero visibility, he wouldn't be able to see me cry. But I figured he'd be calm because he's been in shit so bad, stuff so bad, it would make me cry. I did that one just to wake you guys up. If I have to be awake, you have to be awake. Anyway, I figured if anybody's gonna be calm, it's our 20-year veteran of the dive master industry. And somebody that's been in stuff so bad it'd make me cry, because I've been in some fairly bad stuff. Apparently not that bad, but what I thought was fairly bad. And I guess was unaware that there was worse than zero visibility. So I'm not sure what that was. But anyway, when I got to him, and I'm just feeling around, and I ran into a set of tanks. And I went, wow, he is stubborn. And I put my hands down in the goo, and there was no body in those tanks. So I started in again. And a few feet later, I got hit in the face with a hand, which is really not a good feeling. When the first thing you can see is blue fingers on your mask. And I started shaking him and purging irregularly where I figured a head might be. And he just bobbled there, because all I could see was the hand dancing in front of my face. And so I started the task of getting him out. And once I got him out and fully decompressed and came to the surface, first thing the sheriff says, where are his tanks? And I said, they're still in there. And he looks at me like I'm an idiot and says, I need those. Why did you take him off him? I said, well, I didn't take him off. And he'd have been a lot easier to get out had he had them on. And he said, well, go back in, we need them. I said, I will, give me a minute. So I told the guys that were there helping me, I said, I need a stage bottle with an inflator hose, that's it. somewhere, some way to inflate his wing so I could float these tanks out. I'm not carrying this other 108s out. Because, why? Because I assumed he was dead. They were empty. Why else would he be dead? So I went back in, and by the time I got back in there, several hours had passed, and there was a little bit of visibility, 2 feet or so. And so I started looking around as I'm supposed to, as an IU sir. Remember, what can I see? What data can I collect there while it's fresh? And one of the things was I looked at his pressure gauge, and he had 2,200 PSI instead of 108s. Later on, when we did the analysis, because when I got back there, when I got through the zero visibility into clear water, I looked around, and over here's a little tunnel, and debris coming out of there like somebody's back there with a yard sweeper. And I thought, well, he's alive. And that's when I went in. But later on, when I looked at his computer versus my computer, when his stopped moving, I missed him by less than 2 minutes. And he had 2,200 PSI instead of double 108s at 80 feet. He could have stayed in there for hours. So the guy that was going to be the most calm person in the world was dead, and he could have been rescued. But he had a feeling of security, often while unaware or unconcerned with unpleasant realities or harmful possibilities. So here, like every other story, and I could sit here and tell you body recovery stories all day long, and every one of them is going to end with this same phrase, because that's the way it goes. It's always not going to happen to me. It's going to be somebody else. The last guy that I got out of Jacksonville alive, he was in there with 4 of his friends, 3 of his friends. 2 of them were side mount, 2 of them were back mount. They accidentally went into a side mount only tunnel. And it got really bad, but he just kept going. And after a good bit of time, one of them decided, one of the side mount guys, I've had enough of this, and he turned around. And he bumped into the guy right in front of him, who was also in side mount, and he turned around, and they left. So now in a side mount tunnel, the only 2 guys left in there are the back mount divers. And they're just wiping it out, trying to squeeze through all these restrictions. And just getting worse and worse and worse. Finally, it got to where one of them could turn around. Well, they both could have. But the guy leading, he still had visibility as long as he kept moving forward. So he kept moving forward. The other guy, he turned around and he started fighting all those restrictions on the way out. When the guy got to the last restriction, he just couldn't, by this time the whole tunnel and most of the cave was wiped out. And he couldn't hold on to that line and get through that restriction. So he let go of the restriction to help wiggle his way through that last restriction. When he got through that last restriction, the line ends right there. So once he got through, he was past the end of the line. And he started looking around, feeling around, no light. And he never deployed a safety reel. Guy with many years of cave diving experience and many cave dives, and I mean, he obviously finished all his cave training. But he had a feeling of security. I'm not going to read it again. But you get the idea. I mean, it was complacency because I know what I'm doing. It's right here. I'll just feel around and I'll find, I mean, no use taking this off. Expediency, that's another term that falls right in with complacency because we're always in a hurry. And to deploy that safety reel would have taken a great deal of time, several seconds, possibly even a minute or so. And I just don't have that kind of time. So his feeling of security, and I know what I'm doing. I mean, it was just right here. How could I get lost? I mean, I'm me. And so he just thought he'd just feel around, and around, and around, and around, and around. They had planned a 45-minute dive. When I got him out, who let the dogs out? When I got him out, I had to hold him in the chimney coming up because he had been in there for 3.5 hours. And he had long since run out of gas. But in his feeling around, because he was complacent, he didn't need a reel because of his feeling of security and his unawareness of the impending doom or dangers. He just kept searching around. And it's real mucky back there, and he just kept wiping it out, making it worse and worse and worse. And he had 3 friends who were just right with him. And they looked and looked and looked until they didn't have enough gas to look anymore and still get out. One of the guys with the best sack rate, because they had a little bit of communication going on, he decided to stay and look. And the other two would go get help. And that's what I was called. This guy, in his searching and searching and searching and searching, because we didn't have time to deploy that safety reel, or I don't know what was going through his mind. He never really explained that part. But he did find a line. Unfortunately, it was a bad choice. It went up into a worse side mount tunnel. And he's in back mounted doubles and a good sized guy. There's only one place that he could even squeeze through. And he thought he was somewhere else that was a circuit. And so he figured, well, I found the line, I'm just going to continue around. And he squeezed and wiggled. And he did say later that he remembered looking up and he saw a small air pocket. Well, there is no air pocket there. He had been looking for so long. That was his expelled gas. That's all it was. Well, he got up in that tunnel. And while he was wiggling through that restriction, and the line was behind him, his tanks grinding on line, grinding on rock, cut the line in half. And the line went down. So now he's up in this nasty tunnel, and he doesn't have a way out. So he went in and in and in, and it just got smaller and smaller and smaller. Till he turned around and started coming back out in zero visibility. And then he got to the end of the line. Uh-oh, must have taken a wrong turn, back anyway. And he said he just went back and forth in that tunnel until he ran out of gas. And when he took his last breath, he said, I thought, uh-oh, what do I do now? And he said he remembered seeing a little air pocket, so he went to the ceiling and started feeling around. And he found an air pocket. And it was real small, and he said he was only up in it for about 2 or 3 minutes. And he started falling asleep. And he went, uh-oh, I'm gonna die. So he started feeling around for another one, and he found another air pocket. And this one was a little bit bigger. And he said a few minutes after that, he heard the whir of a scooter. And he went, oh good, somebody's coming to look for me. And then the scooter stopped. And that was me getting to the zero visibility tunnel and starting my search. And he said he started banging his HID light on his tanks, hoping somebody would hear it. And he banged and banged and banged until he said I was gonna fall asleep. And he said at that point, I knew I was gonna die. He said, I was just glad that it was going to be peaceful. I was just going to go to sleep. And he said, then he doesn't even remember me showing up. He was so out of it. I thought he was dead. And I remember him looking down. As I was coming up to him, I just saw legs and a light hanging there motionless. And I reached up to grab the body. And about that time I breathed. I don't do that a whole lot. And the bubbles went up and apparently woke him up. And he looked down at me and I went, oh shit, he's alive. And I got a regulator to him and this little teeny air pocket's about this big and he's up there scrunched up in this air pocket. And I got a reg out for him, but he's not taking it. And where I could fit up in there was only about this tall. And I could only get one half of my mask in there. And I looked at him to make sure, geez, do I have this thing in the right spot? And I had to turn my head with my lips up against a rock. And I said, are you okay? And he, oh so calmly, looked over at me, waited a minute and said, yeah, I'm all right. Which was way better than what I had envisioned going up through this crack, waiting for somebody to tear my head off. And so I turned my head again, because every time I'd ask a question, I'd have to look at him through one eyeball. And then I put my face back up and I said, do you have any gas? No, I'm all out. And I said, do you think you could do me a favor and put this in your mouth? Sure. And he started breathing. So then I proceeded to talk to him for a little bit, telling him how bad it was going to be. And there was only one place that he could fit through. And I had to find it because the line's gone. And normally we put the gas diver where? In front of us. But I gotta use these. I got a safety reel in one hand, which I know is line trapped every which way from Sunday. And then I gotta find this only way out in zero visibility. And I thought, well, I know this cave. I figured, hell, if you guys can use, I can. So I know this cave. And I looked, well, like Helen Keller. And over and over, and I couldn't find it. I couldn't find it, and I thought, I had told this guy, no matter what happens, no matter how long this takes, you have to stay calm. Because I didn't want him freaking out on me halfway through my search and killing me from behind. But he did, he stayed calm, and to go 20 feet took me about 35 minutes. Now, all I had was two little high pressure 100s. When I started the dive, I went in on the left one because I can only give him gas out of the right one. And now I haven't seen my gauges in a really long time. And I've been on this one for over an hour. And he's been on this one for over a half an hour. And I'm thinking, I'd really hate for one of us to run out of gas. And not to be selfish, but I know which one I was thinking the most would hate to run out of gas. But anyway, I got him out. And people, when I would tell the story, and when he would tell the story, I would tell people how this air pocket was this big in the middle and this big at the side, and it was that big around. And they went, wrong. Because that could only sustain life for a couple minutes. Well, I don't know how it happened either, because it shouldn't have. He should have been dead. But he wasn't. He stayed calm and he stayed alive, and we got him out of there. But it goes right back to this feeling of security, while often unaware or unconcerned with unpleasant realities or harmful possibilities. He didn't even stick to his training. And that's what all of these things I just talked about had to do with. When you did your cave training, did they tell you always have a continuous guideline to the surface except when you know the cave? Because I don't remember that part. Did they say always mark T's until you know the cave? And just like I told Harry, it's all fun and games when it's crystal clear I mean, hell, we're all smart. We can all figure out which way's out, kind of, sort of, maybe, hopefully, until you start doubting yourself. Or until the visibility's gone. And I don't care how well you think you know a cave. When that visibility's gone and that line's gone, guess what? You don't know that cave at all. And it doesn't care whether you live or die. So, the only thing I can say is, we really need to learn the definition of complacency. And we need to stop looking at you, and you, and you, because you guys are the only ones that are complacent, not me. And look at ourselves. I mean, I love to say I do everything right. But I'm afraid of that Pinocchio thing going on, and I don't want to have that happen. So we've got to look at ourselves and say, I don't like it when he's complacent. And it really irritates me when she's complacent. But what about me? Let's look in the mirror for a second. And how calm are you going to be when you don't know the cave near as well as you thought you did? And all the walls close in on you. Because Harry was going to be the most calm guy in the world, because he's been in visibility so bad it'd make me cry. And if you'd never heard of any of these things, and I didn't tell these stories, and I had a list on here with a little picture of each of the 5 people, the 4 that I rescued and the 5th that I should have, but either I was too slow, which I'm going to hope that wasn't the case, because I did my best, or he could have been just a little more calm like he said he was going to. But if I put those pictures up and a little blurb beside each one, little teeny story about each person, and I just asked you, of those 5, 4 guys and 1 young girl, who do you think would be the most likely to panic? Well, 2 of them were open water, 3 of them were full, 1 of them was full cave, and 2 of them were in a cave class. So most people would look at the young, inexperienced girl and say, that's the one that would panic. But not the 20-year dive master veteran that's been in visibility so bad Ed would cry. And don't go telling everybody I cry on it. But, because I'm not going to tell you whether I did or not that day. But anyway, she was the one that stayed calm. The guy that I found up in the air pocket in that cave, he was calm because he was CO2'd out of his mind and half brain dead, or temporarily. But she wasn't. She still had all her faculties, but she stayed calm. And even when I took her down, I told her, I said, this is going to be really bad, and I need you to stay calm. I said, I'm not going to let go of you. I am going to get you out, but I have to have you stay calm. And she said, okay. And she had a death grip on my arm, and off we went. But she did. She stayed calm, even when we got out of the water. Not to mention that, was there any other complacency? Not really, other than he was an open water diver 800 feet back in a cave, and that he was on a jump with no jump reel. Oh, and did I mention he had a scooter? Yeah, he had a scooter. That's the only reason I found the tunnel, was I saw the scooter next to all the silt billowing out. So, other than the lack of training, other than the no jump reel, other than the no primary reel, other than the scooter without DPV training, there wasn't a whole lot, really, that he was complacent about, I think. So, there's complacency in everything. There's complacency in how we dive, the different things that we decide to omit in our dive plan or our dive itself. And I've seen it in training. Instructors are complacent. Those standards are for him, but not for me, because I know this cave, or whatever the case may be. I had one instructor candidate, which I think is here tonight, who said, the other day, which I liked, he said, "You make diving and training interesting, very animated." So all I want to do is, as safety director for the NSS CDS for that area, I try and promote safe cave diving. Try and teach it also. I'm also the body recovery person for that area, and I'd really rather do one than the other. So all I can say is, you know, when we're thinking of complacency after this, after you've been bored out of your mind and you've heard a feeling of security, often while unaware or unconcerned with unpleasant realities or harmful possibilities, which you'll probably never forget now. Let's look in the mirror and say, how can I not do that? How can I not be one of Ed's long and boring stories at the next convention? Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for me. This is going to be kind of the start of what everybody else is going to talk to. It was kind of not just a lecture, not just a theme, but I think Chris was really trying to put together more of a call to arms of, we're really sliding downhill. And the only way we're going to stop that slide is to stop blaming it on the next guy. Stop looking at, well, he's complacent, but not me, or he's doing that wrong, but not me. Oh, but let's start looking at what can we do to change this before we get talked about in the next story or the next pie chart that Jeff Bozanik puts together for us. Because he puts a lot of that stuff together. You know what, I love Jeff, before I finish, I love Jeff. And so I gotta do one more quick boring story. About 8 years ago, Richie Kohler and Jeff Bozanik and I were diving in Hole in the Wall. Now Jeff is a wealth of knowledge, and he knows probably every one of those pie charts and graphs and case histories by heart, because he put all this stuff together painstakingly. And who would be the least complacent guy on the planet? Jeff Bozanik. And we got, it just happened to pop into my head. We got out of a 3.5 hour dive in Hole in the Wall. And we're loading our stuff back to the house. And I said, "Hey, Jeff, Richie, Stacy wants to go to dinner tonight. My treat, what do you say?" Jeff goes, "I can't, Ed. I'm late." I said, "Well, where do you have to go?" Because he lives in California. He goes, I got to be at my mom's. I said, "Your mom moved to Florida?" No, I got to be on a plane in less than 2 hours. I said, "Dude, we just got out of a 3.5 hour decompression dive." He goes, "Yeah, I hope that plane stays pressurized or I'm going to explode." Thanks for putting up with me.